All right, guys. This is really a generation N, but it's not because of what I normally. So I didn't put I did not put the usual intro in here. But I want to talk about the evolution of Mario Kart. As basically yesterday, Mario Kart got released with the Switch 2, and a lot of people. I've did a video about this. I did an endcast about Mario Kart a long time ago, and I hope you guys could check it. I might see if I could. I might see if I have that Mario Kart and and put it as an end cast on Sunday. I don't know. We'll see. But other than that, though, yes, Mario Kart become Nintendo's biggest franchise, and I said this was Nintendo's biggest franchise, but people didn't believe me back then when I did the poll video. But whatever. Point taken in this. This is from Thomas Game Docs. He's a good YouTuber, good channel. I like his channel. I am a subscriber of his channel, and as you can see, I already gave it a thumbs up. I gave a lot of his stuff thumbs up. You basically came from another video that was earlier this week about the Joy-Con magnet. If you missed that, talk about how the evolution, how we became the Joy-Con Switch 2 Joy-Con magnets. You check that out and see how Nintendo kept on working and improving it, and take a simple concept and made it work. And as I said right now, hope you guys enjoy some Mario Kart World and your Switch 2. Hope there's no problems. I think there's nothing's perfect. You might get some issues, but hopefully there's no problems and your console works good. You get the day one patch so you can operate and work and go from there. With that said, this video will have is a long video. I might talk. I'm gonna talk less than I usually talk because I think he does a good job. And again, I'm doing this. I don't go and check out the video without my commentary. If you want, please do that. I don't make. I do not monetize my channel. So I'm not stealing his thing to make any money or any nothing on that because I don't monetize my channel. He all got commercials. Yeah, I'll skip over them, but I make. I'll skip what you see in the videos edited out. They skipped over, but in him, he still get his revenue for it. And yes, respect again for Thomas for a great channel that he provides. With that said, let's get into the video.
Mario Kart is more successful than it has any right to be. More successful than regular Mario games, in fact. On the Switch, Super Mario Odyssey has sold 29 million copies, but Mario Kart 8 has sold 67 million. And it's the same on almost every Nintendo console. Mario Kart games nearly always sell far more copies than actual Mario platformers. So then, what's the secret to Mario Kart's huge success? Well, today I want to travel back to the beginning of the series and work our way forward. We're going to look at how every single Mario Kart game was created to understand how these kart racing titles became so darn successful.
And again, this is a re-upload because I watched this video a couple of years back. He re-uploaded this because of Mario Kart World. And if you came from that video that I did earlier this week about the magnets, you're gonna see again how Nintendo does certain things. Like, I love the ingenuity. I love the concept of like the engineers figuring out, or game designers figuring out certain things and seeing what to keep, what not to keep, what to put there, how to make this the funnest game you have, and you will see every evolution of the game. But man, check it out. Like I say, jump along with us and watch this. How Nintendo design games. Sadly, there is another video, another Generation N talking about Bungie. That's gonna come up on like Generation N, and that one is a true Generation N. And you will see the difference between how Bungie messed up their stuff to get to where they are. They're still around, but they messed up a lot compared to how Nintendo took one franchise and kept with it. Now, Nintendo's a bigger company, but like I said, they kept the heart of the game going. And I like how, as you will see, they made sure that the game stayed a certain way because for a certain time, and also when to evolve it. I would like the way how they come up with the ideas. All right, so let's go ahead into this.
Here's how Mario Kart became Nintendo's biggest franchise. Part 1. Super Mario Kart. There's three people who are really important to know about when you talk about Mario Kart's history. The first is Shigeru Miyamoto, the man who created Mario and Zelda. And around 1990, he made a request to two other people within Nintendo, Hideki Kono and Tadashi Sugiyama. Both Kono and Sugiyama were game designers at the company who'd worked there for about 5 or 6 years at the time. And Shigeru Miyamoto came to the duo with a suggestion. What if they made a two-player racing game, similar to F-Zero? F-Zero was Nintendo's first big racing game, and it was all about speed, about going as fast as you possibly could. It was also a single-player game, and so if Hideki Kono and Tadashi Sugiyama were going to make a two-player version of it, they'd have to make some big changes. Here's a map of one of F-Zero's race courses, and now I'm going to lay a map of a Mario Kart racecourse on top of it. Just look at the massive difference in size here. That size difference is because of technical limitations. F-Zero pulls off its huge courses by switching between lots of smaller pieces of track as you drive. But because Mario Kart would have to render two different points of view, one for each player, it couldn't switch between maps on the fly. Instead, the game's designers had to cram in an entire racecourse into a 1024 by 1024 pixel box. So, because the courses would be smaller, Kono and Sugiyama slowed down the speed of the vehicles, in the process changing them from race cars to go-karts. And because each of the game's courses were laid out on the exact same square, the racetracks would twist and turn around themselves, again making them feel less like racing courses and more like go-kart tracks. And so it was decided, Kono and Sugiyama's racing game would be a go-kart racing game. Not long after that, Hideki Kono asked the game's producer, Shigeru Miyamoto, to let the whole team spend a day at a local amusement park to try driving real go-karts. Miyamoto replied, "Why, can't you tell what they're like without driving them?" But he eventually gave in, and the game's development team got to spend the day at a local park called Nemu no Sato, where they...
And there's where you need to have the creativity. Thank God that Miyamoto is the guy with the ideas, and he could design certain things. But again, and I'm happy that sometimes he is a little stubborn, and it's been over through the years that he's like his ideas, try to implement them or do some things was not gonna work, and I like that at least some of the people stand up to him, and sometimes he stand up to some people that say, hey, can you even stand up to Yamamuchi in certain things to get certain games done. So I'm happy that he did that. But that's the kind of thing you need. You need somebody with the plans, but you need somebody else with the execution. And again, just like you see that Bungie video you're gonna come up and see, and the same thing I said before, you need the money part, you need the idea part. But there's a part between the money and the idea part, the execution part, that needs to happen too. You need both parts, but the execution is the key factor. I'm happy he relented, and yes, go-kart racing is different from driving a car, 100%. I could tell you that from my experience.
Tried driving real go-karts. While they were there, the game's sound designer, Taro Bando, even recorded the sounds of the karts, which you can hear in the final game. After returning to HQ, some members of the game's development team also tried building a big remote-controlled go-kart, which they drove around Nintendo's offices. Unfortunately, when they passed the remote control to Super Mario Kart's main programmer, Masato Kimura, he crashed the go-kart into a wall 5 seconds after trying it, and the kart was, in the words of Hideki Kono, pulverized. Now, for the first 3 to 4 months of development, the characters driving the go-karts were completely generic. Early on, we had young men in overalls driving the karts, said Kono. We put helmets on them and used different colors to differentiate between them, added Tadashi Sugiyama. But looking from behind, we couldn't tell who was who. The pair began to wonder, what if there was a character who was recognizable even from behind? They landed on Mario. So, after about a year of development, and with only 8 staff members, Super Mario Kart was finally complete. The game proved to be wildly successful, selling almost 9 million copies and becoming the 4th best-selling game on the SNES. But Super Mario Kart was just the beginning.
Ciao! It's Italy, baby!
Basically.
Part 2, Mario Kart 64. With Super Mario Kart a big success, and with Nintendo working on their next big console, the Nintendo 64, it only made sense to start work on a new Mario Kart game. This new game's development team was largely the same as before, with Shigeru Miyamoto producing and Hideki Kono directing. Tadashi Sugiyama also worked on the game, but this time focusing on the graphics. The initial plan was for this new Mario Kart game to launch alongside the Nintendo 64, just like Super Mario 64. But near the end of development, Shigeru Miyamoto stole a bunch of the developers from the Mario Kart team to help him get Mario 64 done on time. Now, the Nintendo 64's biggest strength as a console was 3D gaming. The SNES wasn't designed with 3D graphics in mind, so the original Super Mario Kart used tricks to simulate 3D visuals. But the Nintendo 64 was different. It was designed squarely with 3D graphics in mind, which meant that this new Mario Kart would have a whole new dimension to play with. But that also caused a whole new dimension of difficulty for the development staff. The biggest difference from the Super NES game was the 3D graphics, said Hideki Kono. At the time, I didn't know much about 3D imaging, so I had a very hard time. But to make matters even harder, producer Shigeru Miyamoto gave the developers a really challenging goal: 4-player races. Shigeru Miyamoto said in an interview, "The N64 CPU is quite fast, and doing those kinds of calculations is one of its specialities. But even so, at first the programmers said, this is impossible." And to pull off those 4-player races, the development staff had to make use of some really clever tricks.
And there you go again with what I just stated about that. So now you have the execution teams like, this is a little tougher than you thought, but the idea man, Shigeru, was like, I think we can pull this off. I looked at the specs, and he knows certain specs too, so it's not that, but I think you can pull it off. And the 64 had 4 controllers anyway, so that was the point to do that. So again, once again, that's the difference between them and other companies. Now there are the other not companies, gaming companies like Sony and Microsoft. Microsoft had that initial thing spark in the Xbox, the Xbox 360, and then they lost it away. Sony had it in the PlayStation 1, PlayStation 2, a little bit in PlayStation 3, and then after that they lost it away too, because you could see where they go into live services and not single players and all that stuff like that. Sega had that. They lost it because of consoles, but they still have it as for making games, and they have made great games from since the Dreamcast has been done. So I kind of knock Sega for that. Again, including Sonic Team, they have some ups. They have some really good ups and some horrible downs and horrible mids. But you have some good. You have your Sonic Mania that was great. You had your Sonic Rush that was also great. Again, the music is just mwah. And if you want good music, if you want to check out Sonic Mania and Sonic Rush's OTS music soundtrack, go to the jukebox of the channel, and you can listen to it without no commentary. Just play it and have fun. Listen to those music. out there, because again, for Sonic Rush to take the samples that they sample and turn it into music, fun, and Sonic Mania sampling the old stuff and flipping it, T-Loops did a great job, plus the other team, and Hyper Portion. Even though Hyper Portion is not together as much as now because of the creepy stuff they did. Ugh. Why that happens, I don't get it, but shout out to them anyway. Keep going.
The biggest of all being the fact that none of the karts or drivers in the game are really 3D at all. Instead, the characters were modeled in 3D and then rendered into flat images at a bunch of different angles. Then, in the game, you display one of these flat images on screen and the character looks like they're 3D. If the character turns left, you just switch out the image on screen, with the image you have of them facing left. This technique is called billboarding, and without it, Mario Kart 64 could never have supported 4-player races. The Nintendo 64 just couldn't have displayed that many complicated 3D characters on screen at once.
Smart idea how to do it.
Once they taste...
Really, Mario Kart 64 isn't a dramatically different game from its predecessor, which is something the team worried about. We really did struggle to find ways to differentiate this game from Super Mario Kart, said Tadashi Sugiyama. The biggest difference this time round was the 3D courses. In the original Super Mario Kart, the courses were just flat images tilted at an angle to give the illusion of 3D. The game's lead programmer, Masato Kimura, described it as like everyone is racing on a flat sheet of paper. But with this game, Nintendo's designers were able to create fully 3D courses with troughs and valleys and hills for the player to ride around. This created much more difficult physics calculations for the programmers, but as a matter of pride, they refused to deny any requests from the designers when it came to complicated course layouts. These intricate racetracks were one of the key ways the game's developers hoped Mario Kart 64 would stand out from its predecessor. Near the end of development, though, a disaster happened. The computer which stored all of the rendered images of the characters crashed. And according to programmer Tomoaki Kurome, all of our work got erased. Of course, we had backups, but not everything could be recovered. We had no choice but to remake everything from scratch. So, in the end, about 80% of the character models ended up getting made twice. But I think the remakes turned out better than the originals, so I guess it was a blessing in disguise.
I like that.
So, despite this setback, and despite Shigeru Miyamoto borrowing a lot of the game's developers so he could get Mario 64 done on schedule, Mario Kart 64 was finished only 6 months after the Nintendo 64 came out. And just like Super Mario Kart, it ended up becoming one of the best-selling games on the console, second only to Super Mario 64, which finally settled it. Super Mario Kart was no fluke. Mario Kart as a series was wildly popular with fans,
times we played that game.
Which meant it was only onwards from here. Part 3. Mario Kart Super Circuit. 5 years passed. That's right, despite Mario Kart 64's huge success, Nintendo didn't release another Mario Kart game for 5 years. But then, in 2001, Nintendo launched 2 brand new game consoles, the Game Boy Advance and the GameCube. And so, Nintendo took on the ambitious challenge of developing a new Mario Kart game for each console. Nintendo's own developers began work on what would later become Mario Kart Double Dash for the GameCube. And for the other Mario Kart game, Nintendo decided to have an outside studio take on development. They picked Intelligent Systems, the developer behind Fire Emblem, WarioWare, and Paper Mario. Nintendo had been working closely with Intelligent Systems for many years. At the time, Intelligent Systems offices were even located inside Nintendo's headquarters. Now, the Game Boy Advance was not a console designed for 3D gaming. When they announced the console, Nintendo even said right off the bat that the GBA was designed with 2D games in mind. In its later years, some third-party developers did manage to get 3D graphics up and running, but complicated 3D graphics were practically impossible on the GBA at the time of Mario Kart Super Circuit's development. Instead, Intelligent Systems went with a pseudo-3D approach, similar to the original Super Mario Kart. That meant flat 2D courses tilted at an angle. In fact, Super Circuit's pseudo-3D engine had so much in common with the original Super Mario Karts that Intelligent Systems decided to include every racetrack from the original game as a bonus for players.
And that's when we get the retro tracks. And man, like I said, Super Mario Super Circuit was a pain in the butt. I'm not gonna lie, it was all right. It wasn't super fun, but it was all right. But then when I got to the point where I was like, oh wow, they released the original tracks back up, and that bumped it up another level. I'm like, oh, this is really fun. This is a little bit better. Still not my best Mario Kart, but I enjoyed it.
And when the game was released alongside the Game Boy Advance, it proved an immediate hit, with sales eventually reaching almost 6 million units, making it the fourth best-selling game on the GBA, beating any other Mario game. But as Super Circuit was taking shape, a team inside Nintendo was beginning work on an even bigger and more ambitious Mario Kart game.
The one that a lot of people
Part
love.
4, Mario Kart Double Dash. Now, the Game Boy Advance was not the only console Nintendo was developing in 2001. They had a brand new home console in the works too. It was to be far more powerful than Nintendo's previous console, and it would be called the GameCube. During E3 2001, Nintendo showed off a Mario Kart demo to the public. However, it was extremely bare bones and featured assets taken from other games. Behind the scenes, development had only just begun. And since the regular director, Hideki Kono, was busy at the time, a new director was brought in called Kiyoshi Mizuki. Now, Kiyoshi Mizuki had never worked on a Mario Kart game before, but he got stuck in with perhaps the biggest game in the Mario Kart series so far. You see, thanks to the GameCube's processing power, Nintendo was able to finally implement fully 3D characters and karts, rather than the various pseudo-3D techniques that previous games had used. But the hardest problem for the game's director had nothing to do with the graphics. It was deciding on what unique new gameplay idea the game should feature. They needed to please hardcore Mario Kart fans while also attracting brand new players. Mizuki joked in an interview that he would often stay for an hour or so in the bathroom, stressing about these new gameplay features, and said that it was a very difficult task. Eventually, the idea was suggested of 2 players riding in a single go-kart. And right away, this fulfilled a lot of Mizuki's requirements. It would transform the game into more of a party game, letting players of all skill levels take part. If someone wasn't super great at controlling the kart, then they could focus on hitting other players with items instead. But not everyone on the team liked these 2-player karts. There were many heated discussions, as Kiyoshi Mizuki put it, and it wasn't clear up until the last minute whether these 2-player karts would even make it into the game. Another point that came up during development was multiplayer. By Double Dash's release in 2003, the internet was becoming more and more mainstream. In interviews with press leading up to the game's release, Nintendo staff were asked many times about whether Double Dash would allow players to compete against other players via the internet. The answer was no. Tadashi Sugiyama, who was at this point working as a producer, said, "One of the most asked questions is about the online feature. That kind of online feature was not included in this game. but maybe something that we tackle in future Mario Kart games. The omission was more of a technical limitation than a conscious gameplay decision. According to Shinya Takahashi, who now leads all of Nintendo's game development, the Double Dash team didn't believe that internet infrastructure of the time could support the game's high-speed races or battles. He promised that in future, if internet speeds improved, they would revisit the idea of online Mario Kart. Instead, the development team introduced an alternative, LAN connection.
And again, respect for them, because again, they wanted 60 frames per second. It's so funny now that people are like, oh, no, it's finally 60 frames per second and blah, blah, blah. Now they get down about the frame per second part so much now in gaming that, like I said before, there's some, as Tripp knows, and this, Thomas Sowell said, there are always some sacrifices. There was a trade-off. They're not going to be a one-to-one. That's why I say there's no perfect games out there. You have to sacrifice something to get it to work way more better than the trade-off to make it work way more better than it's supposed to be. And Double Dash did that. But you did have LAN party, as he's going to explain right now.
By connecting multiple GameCubes together with LAN adapters, up to 8 players could compete in races and 16 players in battle mode. It's a pretty neat way to race against large numbers of people, but whether it fills the gap of online racing, I'll leave that up to you to decide. And so, in late 2003, Mario Kart Double Dash was released for the Nintendo GameCube. It was, at the time, the most unique Mario Kart game Nintendo had developed. It probably still is, in fact. Tadashi Sugiyama said in an interview, "We have been able to put everything we wanted into the game. We left some things out when we finished Mario Kart for the N64, but all these features are now included in Double Dash." But there was one major omission that came up time and time again in interviews, online racing. So, for the next Mario Kart entry, this would be something that Nintendo's developers would face head on. Part 5. Mario Kart DS. Series co-creator Hideki Kono had been preoccupied during Double Dash's development, and so had little impact on the title. But with Nintendo's next handheld console, the DS, in the works, it was time for a new Mario Kart game to enter development. And around this time, Hideki Kono returned to the reins as producer of 2 games. You see, Shigeru Miyamoto personally asked Kono to oversee both Mario Kart DS and also Nintendogs, with the 2 titles in development at the same time. Kono said in an interview, "I would say to myself, okay, today is a Mario Kart DS day, and tomorrow is a Nintendogs day, but sometimes the director of Mario Kart DS would want to meet on a Nintendogs day. I'd have him wait until evening, and then, after I'd driven all the dogs out of my head, we'd sit down and talk." One of the main goals the team had this time round was playing with friends. Using the DS's wireless local connection feature, up to 8 people could race against each other. Plus, thanks to download play, only a single cartridge was needed for the whole group to join. Pretty neat. But, right near the end of the game's development, Kono and his team decided to set themselves a huge challenge. They wanted to add online racing, which had been left out of Double Dash before. Hideki Kono, along with company president Satoru Iwata, traveled to the US headquarters of Nintendo of America to see what the American staff thought of the idea. The response was so great that we soon began working on it in earnest, said Kono. It was all very last minute, with the team having to pare the online mode down to its most basic set of features. Only 4 racers, no leaderboards, no sharing ghost data online. But, crucially, the team managed to get the online mode working for the game's late 2005 release date. This was the first online mode in a DS game, let alone the Mario Kart series. And so all of the team should have been very happy with how things turned out. Except one person wasn't. President Iwata reminisced to Hideki Kono. "Kono-san, I remember how frustrated you looked. At a meeting you had this completely unsatisfied look on your face. Having to cut all of those additional online features was extremely frustrating for Kono. He made up his mind that for their next Mario Kart game, all of his online mode dreams would become reality."
But DS was a good
Part
game.
6. Mario Kart Wii.
Before we go on, DS was a good game. I love Mario Kart DS, and I'm happy it's on. And if you need to check it out, play it on the Nintendo Online, NOS Online. You'll have fun with it because I love the missions, and that's what I'm hoping that's in Mario Kart World. But I love the missions. The missions are fun. The game was a good game. That's one. Hate the snaking. Snaking was the thing I didn't like because I'm like, you play online, you're like, how the hell these guys are getting this far? I'm doing it, and then I'm like, oh, that's how they're doing it. When you fall out, they're snaking, you whatever. But yes, but I like how the missions were. Tracks was good. You could personalize your cars, and I had fun with Mario Kart DS. I really did. And for me, I thought that would have been a perfect time to jump into Mario Kart DS, see how Mario Kart DS was, and make it into a Mario Kart Diddy Kong Racing, like how Diddy Kong Racing had the certain tracks. And Nintendo, please release Diddy Kong Racing. I know Microsoft, blah blah blah. Microsoft, you say you have fun, but Nintendo, ask Microsoft to release Diddy Kong Racing on the NOS for 64 now. Like, it will be good to release that. That's a good game to play. Ah, man, memories. The memories.
Development on a new Mario Kart title for Nintendo's upcoming Wii console began in 2006. And while previous games had differentiated themselves with unique game mechanics, like Double Dash's dual rider system, for instance, producer Hideki Kono had a new trick up his sleeve this time round. He wanted to use the Nintendo Wii's motion controls to make this game approachable to those who'd never played a video game in their lives.
Yep.
He said in an interview, "When we made Mario Kart DS, my parents tried to play it together with their grandchild, but it was difficult for them to use the control pad. They were saying, 'This is hard.' So, for Mario Kart Wii, Kono wanted to remove the need to use D-pads or analog sticks in favor of something that felt natural to almost everyone, using a steering wheel. So, in late 2006, Kono reached out to Nintendo's hardware development team with the suggestion of creating some kind of steering wheel peripheral for the Wii remote. Miyamoto was also on board with the idea, saying, "I kind of wanted to make a product that would come in a big box for a change." The hardware team developed numerous prototypes throughout 2007. This is one of the earliest Wii wheel prototypes, where the corners of the Wii remote actually stick out a little. In later attempts, the whole remote was covered, but the wheel became less of a circle and more of a squashed rectangle. According to Kenichiro Ashida of the Product Development Division, "We checked out some real go-kart wheels and saw that they're usually square steering wheels today, rather than round ones."
Yep.
However, eventually Ashida and his team came to the conclusion that a round wheel is what the everyday person is used to.
Yep.
And so, after a number of revisions, the final design of the Wii wheel was landed upon. The Mario Kart dev team felt so strongly that the wheel was an important part of Mario Kart Wii that they put it on the front of the game box. But there was another big innovation introduced in Mario Kart Wii, which also came from the mind of producer Hideki Kono. He said in an interview, "I love BMX bicycles and snowboarding. When we made the game for the DS, we wanted to put in some elements of extreme sports, but it was difficult to achieve in a handheld game. That's why we decided to make it happen for the Wii." This extreme sports influence led to the introduction of half-pipes in many of the game's tracks, along with motorbikes. Previously, Miyamoto had vetoed the idea, saying he thought it would be strange to see Mario riding a bike. But this time round, he gave his approval. The team even planned on calling the game Mario Kart X after extreme sports. But Super Smash Bros. Developer Masahiro Sakurai beat them to the punch with Super Smash Bros. Brawl's Japanese title, Super Smash Bros. X. And then finally, there was the online mode.
This is kind of stupid,
born
but
from
hey.
Hideki Kono's frustration with the limited online options in Mario Kart DS, the team developed a whole range of online modes and features for Mario Kart Wii. Standard races could be played with a full 12 players from across the globe, and friends were able to drop into lobbies their friends were in. There were also time trial rankings and ghost data from players across the globe. Mario Kart Wii really embraced all of the online features at the team's disposal. Thanks to the Mario Kart channel on the Wii, you could even see if your friends were playing without the Mario Kart game disc in your console.
Yep.
Mario Kart Wii went on to sell a whopping 37 million copies,
Yes.
making it the second best-selling Wii game behind only Wii Sports. The team was able to take a couple-year break from Mario Kart after the game's 2008 release. But when it came time to develop the next Mario Kart entry, the game's developers would face an altogether different kind of problem to any they'd faced before. Part 7. Mario Kart 7. Development on a new Mario Kart entry for Nintendo's upcoming handheld, the 3DS, began in 2010. This time, Kosuke Yabuki, a game designer who worked on Mario Kart Wii, was promoted to director. And from the start, Yabuki knew he wanted to mix up the traditional Mario Kart gameplay. He modified Mario Kart Wii so that the karts could fly through the air. He also tried making them feel floaty and light, telling producer Hideki Kono, "Doesn't it look like they're underwater? Wouldn't it be fun to drive underwater?" And so, Yabuki led a tiny team of 8 developers to begin building a prototype for this new Mario Kart game. But while development was getting off to a good start, the team would soon run into a pretty huge problem. They had no more developers to work on the game. You see, at the same time, Nintendogs and Cats was also in early production, and of the 2 3DS titles, it was Nintendogs which was prioritized. According to Hideki Kono, when we got to the stage where we'd really be getting down to business on Mario Kart 7, lots of titles were underway in the department, and we had a problem. We didn't have enough members to develop the game. Kono began discussing...
And another thing I need to point out here, he may be going to talk about it a little bit, but Nintendo didn't have the hundreds, or like Grand Theft Auto 6 is coming out. I think they had, what, 2,000 designers? Like, whatever. They did all this with a small team, and my hat is off to that. That's why I look like it with the original Bungie team. When it was small and it was you were more concentrated, you could figure out more issues easier. You had a person-to-person contact to know what's going on. But this, over and over, and Nintendo's done that too. Do not get me wrong. Nintendo has also done the whole, because that's how they did Metroid. They made sure that the Austin team got what they got. They had to fly over to Nintendo, show them what they got, speak the language, show them what they have, and then fly right back to Austin when they're doing their games. Because Retro was not in the Japanese market. They're from Texas. So again,
this problem with some of the other high-level staff at Nintendo, including President Satoru Iwata and producer of the Metroid Prime series, Kensuke Tanabe.
There you go.
Tanabe's role at the company was to coordinate development with external game studios, including Texas-based Retro Studios.
There you go.
Retro Studios were the ones behind the Metroid Prime trilogy, and at the time, work was just finishing on Donkey Kong Country Returns. Kono said in an interview, the timing when they were going to be wrapped up with Donkey Kong Country Returns matched the timing we would start needing help. The timing was right, and we ended up making it happen.
There you go.
And so began an international partnership to bring the next Mario Kart title to life. That December, a group of developers from the Texas-based studio were flown out to Japan to meet producer Hideki Kono, director Kosuke Yabuki, and the rest of the Mario Kart team at Nintendo. While initially the two groups felt a little distant, it was during a dinner at a yakiniku restaurant that the barriers were broken down. After returning to the US, Retro's staff held weekly video calls with the Mario Kart devs in Japan. It was decided that half the courses would be created by Retro and half by Nintendo in Japan. This way, each group could learn new approaches and take inspiration from the work of the other studio.
I love it.
It helped that Retro's devs were all big Mario Kart fans. Kono stated, they were very, very knowledgeable about Mario Kart. During one video call, slow internet meant that Retro were the only ones who could hear the other studio's audio. Nintendo's Japanese staff were impressed when Retro continued the call using hand gestures alone. And so, after an international collaboration between Kyoto and Texas, Mario Kart 7 was released for the 3DS in 2011. Becoming the best-selling game on the system.
Of course.
The Mario Kart team and Retro Studios parted ways shortly afterwards, with Retro developing a sequel to Donkey Kong Country Returns, the critically acclaimed Tropical Freeze. Meanwhile, the Mario Kart devs in Japan began work on the most ambitious and best-selling game in the series' history.
Yep.
Life insurance.
Okay.
Part 8. Mario Kart 8. It was at the start of the 2010s that Nintendo began developing their newest home console, the Wii U. Along with the inclusion of a second screen, this would be Nintendo's first HD game console. And once work finished up on Mario Kart 7, director Kosuke Yabuki and producer Hideki Kono began brainstorming ideas for the next entry in the series. They knew they needed to again surprise players by bringing something new to the table. But what? They'd already gone into the skies and underwater. Where else? Their first idea was to attach drills to the front of the karts and have them dig underground. Subterranean racing is how Hideki Kono described it. But it didn't take long for this idea to fall by the wayside, in favor of a more exciting, and frankly, more fun game mechanic: anti-gravity driving. What if courses could snake onto walls, or even upside down? The team's first idea to utilize anti-gravity driving was a Mobius strip. If you cut a ring of paper and twist one half around before attaching the ends together, you have a loop of paper where the front and back connect as one long loop. A racetrack in the shape of this Mobius strip would be the perfect showcase for the game's new anti-gravity mechanic. And this twisted loop looked a lot like the number 8, which inspired the game's title and logo. And so, with the concept decided on, it was time to enter development in full. According to Yabuki, the core team of developers was the same as those who'd worked on the previous entry, Mario Kart 7, albeit only the Japanese side of the team. But, like I mentioned, the Wii U was Nintendo's first HD console, and across the company, Nintendo's developers found working in HD considerably more difficult than expected. According to Shigeru Miyamoto, we may have underestimated the scale of the change to HD development, and as a result, the overall software development took more time than originally anticipated. To keep development on track, it was decided to once again bring on an external studio to help out. This time, Bandai Namco. Unlike the fairly equal partnership with Retro Studios, Bandai Namco were very much a support studio on Mario Kart 8, with Nintendo's internal staff making the major creative decisions. According to Bandai Namco's own website, we produced approximately half of visual assets for courses, characters, and machine parts. Bandai Namco's involvement was crucial in getting the game out on time and to a high level of polish. And so, in early 2014, Mario Kart 8 was released for the Wii U. It received glowing reviews, which praised its fantastic visuals and music, along with the exciting new anti-gravity-filled courses. On the Wii U, the game sold 8.5 million copies, which means that over 60% of Wii U owners picked up a copy of Mario Kart 8. That's an impressive statistic. But it wasn't on Wii U where the game hit its stride, as it were. No, Mario Kart 8's true success lay just around the corner. Part 8.5. Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, Mario Kart Tour, Mario Kart Live Home Circuit. So, I've now covered all of the mainline Mario Kart games from the SNES up until the Wii U. But those 8 games are only the tip of the iceberg. First of all, there's Mario Kart's arcade offerings. Mario Kart Arcade GP from 2005, along with 3 sequels released in 2007, 2013, and 2017. These games were developed by Bandai Namco, though not the same part of the company that worked on Mario Kart 8. Hideki Kono explained, "We wanted them to have a free hand when they made it. We wanted them to have their own vision, and so we told them to go ahead, go do that on your own." The lack of involvement from Nintendo explains these games' unique vibe, plus the inclusion of non-Nintendo characters like Pac-Man. Then we have the best-selling game in the entire Mario Kart series, Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. According to the game's producer, Kosuke Yabuki, he felt that the Switch would be perfect for Mario Kart, thanks to its dual controllers, which make local multiplayer a breeze. And so, not wanting to waste any time before bringing a Mario Kart title to the system, the team made the decision to bring an updated version of Mario Kart 8 to the new console, rather than develop a new title from the ground up. This approach proved wildly successful, with the game's sales at 67 million and still growing as I make this video. In 2022, when Yabuki was asked whether he'd foreseen the game's monumental success, the producer replied, "We didn't. But in hindsight, Mario Kart 8 Deluxe is a good match for the Switch. You can play the console anywhere and even split the controller in 2, so it's easy to pick up and play with a nearby sibling or friend. 5 years after the game's release, that appeal hasn't faded." Then, in 2019, the company released Mario Kart Tour, a Mario Kart game that can be played on mobile phones. Like Mario Kart 8 before it, the game was developed in partnership with Bandai Namco, who state on their website, "We partially implemented in-game and 3D visual assets for courses, characters, and machines. We also produced approximately half of bonus challenges." It's not clear how involved the core Mario Kart team were in Mario Kart Tour's development, but despite the game's mixed reviews, it went on to receive over 200 million downloads. And then, in 2020, Nintendo released another new Mario Kart game, Mario Kart Live Home Circuit for the Switch, which puts the classic Mario Kart action in your own living room, thanks to a small remote control car carrying a camera. The game got its start when New York-based Velan Studios experimented with the idea of some kind of mixed reality kart racing game. They instantly thought of Mario Kart and put together a prototype which they brought to Nintendo. Impressed, Nintendo greenlit the project. Throughout development, Velan Studios remained in close contact with both Nintendo's software and hardware teams, and the result was 2020's Mario Kart Live Home Circuit. The game received positive reviews and sold 1.7 million copies as of 2022, which is pretty impressive for a more niche entry like Home Circuit. And then finally, in 2022, Nintendo unveiled the Mario Kart 8 Deluxe Booster Course Pass, a series of downloadable courses for Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. Over the course of a year and a half, a whopping 48 courses were added to the game, bringing Mario Kart 8 Deluxe up to a total of 96 courses, far more than any other game in the series. The catch? These courses were all based heavily on pre-existing tracks from Mario Kart Tour. Tour isn't an ugly game, but its art style is rather incongruous with the look of Mario Kart 8. Still, Nintendo did put in work to polish up the tracks somewhat. Yabuki said, "The word remaster might sound cheap, but we're confident that it will create new and unique experiences that are different to how tracks were originally. We had to make all sorts of adjustments, as it wasn't enough to simply leave the tracks as they were." So, while the Nintendo Switch received no brand new mainline Mario Kart games, the series certainly wasn't dormant for those 8 years. But by 2025, it had finally become time for the next big game in this long-running series.
Good.
Part 9, Mario Kart World.
Before we go into Mario Kart World, and again, Mario Kart Deluxe, that was crazy to have all the tracks. And again, this is just me. With Mario Kart World, it starts off at the beginning. That's cool, and we know there are going to be more tracks added on. I think there will be, since this one started from the beginning too. I would like it. I know people ain't gonna like this, but I would like this. But again, that's you see. So again, you don't have to buy it. It's just me and other people. You're one of the reasons to help the game industry. No. I'm the one who wants physical games. I would not mind if Nintendo, and I do mean this. I bought the pack outright and downloaded it. I still want Nintendo to make a Mario Kart Deluxe. I don't know what you call it. Ultimate. That would be better. Mario Kart Deluxe Ultimate. All the tracks, all the stuff on one cart, and sell it for about. I guarantee you, Nintendo, if you sell it for like about $40, you make a ton of money. You make a ton of money. Trust me. $40 to $50. I say $49.99 at the most. Make all the tracks so you don't need it online for nothing. You just have the Mario Kart on the cart itself. The same thing you should do with Smash Brothers as well too. So make it a $60 game for Mario Kart Ultimate. Make it Smash Brothers Ultimate Deluxe, where you have all the characters that y'all put on Smash Brothers and everything, and put it inside the game. That would be a perfect thing to add on to this. But I would say that because Mario Kart 8 had so many tracks, some with some duds, but it still is 98 track or 92, 98 or 92, I don't remember, but if it's 92, let's go with the lower number. 92 tracks with all those players and everything. Oh man, awesome. I guarantee you would sell. I guarantee you'll make more money, Nintendo.
On the 16th of January 2025, after months of rumors, leaks, and speculation, Nintendo finally unveiled their newest game console, the Switch 2. And as part of the first look trailer, a brief snippet of an unannounced new Mario Kart game was shown off. And when I say brief, it's about 15 seconds.
Yep.
But those 15 seconds were enough to set fans' imaginations running wild. The trailer showed off a new, more expressive art style, and more racers than could previously participate in a single race, 24. A few months later, Nintendo announced Mario Kart World, a truly next-generation Mario Kart game. In World, each of the game's courses are interconnected, forming a large, open world for players to race across. In fact, in Grand Prix mode, players actually drive from one track to the next. And with exciting new modes like Free Roam and Knockout Tour, mechanics like rail grinding and wall riding,
Yep.
and a huge roster of characters and costumes,
Yeah, a real
Mario
big
Kart
roster.
World seems like the biggest Mario Kart game to date. Not biggest in terms of track number, Mario Kart 8 Deluxe
How's
will
that?
likely reign supreme on that count with
Yep.
its total of 96. But in terms of
96,
scope
okay, it was 96
and raw
tracks.
ambition, this is the biggest. So, Super Mario Kart got its start in 1993 as a kind of experiment by a tiny team of just 8 people. Flash forward to 2025, when Mario Kart World is launching alongside Nintendo's brand new console, the Switch 2. And I wonder what that original development team would think if you showed them just how far their little creation would come in 30 years.
Not also, I think they'll be puzzled. Most of them are still alive, of course, and they'll be like, "Dang!" And also, it would be crazy that we went out there and actually got raced. Because remember, they actually got kart sounds and everything, the 9 yards. They went all out to make the first game, and look at it now. Like, it's awesome that they did that. And I have to say, that's why when I did this back in the day, people was like, it didn't surprise. I said Mario Kart is the number one selling game. Smash is there, Mario's there, Zelda's there. Don't get me wrong, but Mario Kart by far, and that's why people are like, oh, it should call it Nintendo Kart. No, Mario Kart is the name that sells more than Nintendo Kart. And I like how they said in the Mario Kart World, they went with World because they wanted to do the different things and show the different changes in the world. That's why they went with World. They might go back to a number again, but which ain't gonna be a problem. And I think still I could call it Mario Kart X. And I remember there's a video where I talked about all the stuff they could do. They kind of did it with Mario Kart Deluxe, but I think is again take the Mario Kart, the tracks from the Mario Kart games over the years and call those like leagues or something like that, and race through those. Turn the Super Nintendo into 3D. Turn the 64 is already that. Take those games and call it the SNES Cup, the 64 Cup, Game Boy Cup, GameCube Cup. Like use those tracks in that regard, in that way, and come up and have all those tracks. I think, trust me, that's another hit that Nintendo will have in Mario Kart X. But that will be for the next console. It won't be for this console. But I am not against having a Mario Kart Deluxe Ultimate, 8 Deluxe Ultimate, just so people can have the game on the cart, the full cart. That'd be so cool, and yeah. But I don't want them to. I understand it right now. I will release that maybe like 3-4 years from now, not now. But yeah, just so you don't what do you call it? Mess up Mario Kart World. I think Mario Kart World is gonna be its own game, unique. It's an old fun, but yeah. With that said, thank y'all for joining us on this evolution of the Mario Kart franchise. Man, it's awesome. One of my franchises I love in gaming. Happy to go through most of the history with you. And again, remember to check out Thomas Docks, because the dude is a really good dude.
Thanks very much for watching this big, long video about...
Like I said, check him out, subscribe to his channel if you want to learn about a lot of Nintendo, Sega, Konami, all these kind of stuff, the old school stuff. And that's mostly he really does dig into that, but he does other gaming as well too. So Thomas Game Docs is a really good YouTube channel. Trust me, I ain't gonna stay wrong by going by this guy. And I thank you for giving me basically an hour of your time. Remember out there, people, there's no perfect games out there. What's perfect to you is not perfect to me. What's perfect to me is not perfect to you. Simply enjoy games on all consoles, including PC and mobile devices. As we went through all those with Mario Kart, and I hope you guys enjoy Mario Kart World. And basically, down there in the description, tell me how you enjoyed it. If you enjoy it, what part of Mario Kart you like, what part of Mario Kart World you don't like. Put in the comments. I'll read them. I'll see what it is. So let me know about that. With that said, enjoy the rest of your day and switch to, baby, switch to.